All right, real talk. Most CPG founders I talk to are obsessed with revenue. We're doing 50K a month. We hit six figures. Cool. But are you actually making money? Because here's the brutal truth. Revenue is a vanity metric. I don't care if you're doing 100K a month if you're losing $40 on every single sale. That's not a business. That's an expensive hobby. And look, I'm a numbers guy. I like math because it doesn't have an opinion. It just tells you the truth. And the truth is, most founders are lying to themselves about their margin. So today I'm going to walk you through the exact profit calculator I use to run my beverage brands, Herbal Fuel, and Liquid Blends. This is the same tool I use every single week to make sure that my unit economics actually make sense. And I'm giving it to you for free. By the end of this video, you're gonna know exactly where your margins are bleeding, why you can't scale profitably, and what numbers you need to hit to build a real fundable CPG business. All right, let's dive in. This is the high margin OS profit calculator. It's simple, clean, and honestly, this is all you need to understand if your business is actually profitable or if you're just playing startup. We're gonna plug in some real numbers, the kind of numbers I see from founders who are doing 20K to 50K a month. And here's what's cool. This calculator doesn't lie. It's gonna show you in red, yellow, green, exactly where you stand against CPG elite benchmarks. If your numbers light up red, you've got some work to do. Yellow, you're okay, but there's still some room to optimize. Green, you're in good shape. First, let's talk about selling price. This is what you're charging your customer before sales tax and before anything else. This is just the pure price they're seeing at checkout. So for this example, let's say we're selling a product for $35. That's pretty standard for a lot of CPG products, whether you're selling supplements, beverages, functional foods, whatever, right? So let's say it's $35. There we go. Easy enough, right? This is your baseline. Everything else gets subtracted from this exact number. So next we have the landed product cost. So this is one of the most important numbers in your entire business. And most founders actually don't know what it is. So landed product cost means what does it cost to get one unit of your product sitting in your warehouse or even ready to ship? This includes your manufacturing costs, freight from your manufacturer to your warehouse, any import duties or custom fees if you're importing everything to get it landed in your fulfillment center. So let's say your product cost is $8, right? That's your all-in cost per unit. There it is. If you don't know this number off the top of your head, you need to figure it out today. Because if you're guessing, trust me, you're losing money. Now let's talk about packaging costs. So this is your box, your inserts, your branded tissue paper, your thank you card, whatever you're putting the product in before it ships to the customer. I see a lot of founders cheap out here and they don't track it separately. This is the biggest mistake because packaging adds up very fast. So for example, let's say our packaging cost is $2.50 per order. All right, let's say it's $2.50. Boom. This could be higher if you're doing something fancy or lower if you're keeping it minimum. Either way, you have to know this number. Next, we're going to talk about 3PL pick and pack fees. So if you're using a third-party logistics company, which is a 3PL, to store and ship your products, they charge you a fee every time they pick an item off the shelf, pack it, and ship it out. This is usually anywhere from $2 to $5 per order, depending on your 3PL and how complex your packaging is. Let's say your packaging is $3 per order for pick and pack. Perfect. Now, if you're still fulfilling orders yourself or out of your garage or warehouse, if you're doing in-house fulfillment even, just put $0 here. But once you scale, keep in mind that eventually you're most likely going to use a 3PL. All right, so here's a sneaky one. Discount buffer. So most founders run sales, Black Friday, promotional sales, first-time customer discounts, influencer codes, whatever. You're not always going to sell at full price. Instead of pretending you're always going to be selling at $35 for this example, we need to account for the fact that you're most likely going to have a 10% discount. So say if our discount is 10%, right? Nice. And look what just happened. The effective selling price auto-calculated. It just calculated to $31.50. So that's your real selling price once discounts are factored in. This is the number you're actually going to work with, not $35. All right, now let's talk about shipping cost. What does it cost to ship one order to your customer? Whether you're using UPS, USPS, FedEx, DHL, whatever carrier you're using. So let's say it costs you $6 to ship an average order. There it is. shipping is very brutal right now. Rates keep going up, and what if you're offering your customer free shipping? You're literally eating out your margins. And here's something most founders don't think about as well: shipping volatility buffer. Shipping rates fluctuate, especially during Q4 holiday seasons or peak fuel seasons. So me personally, I always want to account for the unexpected. So I'm just going to add $1 for the shipping volatility buffer. Boom. Look at that. The total shipping cost is now $7. That's your real shipping expense per order. And check this out. The calculator already auto-calculated the gateway fee. So that's your payment processing fee from your Stripe, Shopify payments, or whatever you're using to charge around 4% of your selling price. So you see, it's showing $1.26. So that's 4% of $31.50. You can't avoid this. This is just the cost of doing business online. Now, this is the big one, the total cost of goods sold. So look at this. It's showing that it's $21.76. So this is everything it costs you to fulfill one order. So your product cost is $8, your packaging is $2.50, your pick and pack fee is $3, your shipping is $7, and your gateway fee is $1.26. So that means out of your $31.50 effective selling price, $21.76 goes to costs. And this is where most founders realize, oh shit, I'm not making as much money as I thought I was. All right, so now we're gonna get into the diagnostic part. So this is where the calculator tells you if you're cooked or if you're good. All right, so let's look at the first metric, which is the cost of goods sold percentage. So this shows what percentage of your selling price is eaten up by cost. Just look at this red box, 69.08%. So that means 69% of your revenue is going to cost. You're only keeping 31 cents on every single dollar. And look at this green box next to it. That's the elite benchmark. So this is actually where you need to be. So actually your cost of goods sold percentage should be less than 30%. So elite CPG brands keep their cost of goods sold under 30%. And in this example, it's 69%. So that's more than double what it should actually be. If your cost of goods sold is in the red, like I said, you have a major margin problem. All right, next is the growth margin in dollars. All right, so this is how much money you have left after paying for your product and your fulfillment, but before paying for marketing. So look at this, $9.74 per order. That's your gross profit. That's the cash that you have available to spend on ads, pay yourself, reinvest in the business, whatever. $9.74 doesn't give you a lot of room to work with, right? Now let's look at your gross margin percentage. This is the big one. This is the metric that determines whether you can scale or not. You see the red and 31%? Now, look at the elite benchmark, 60% or higher. So if your gross margin is below 50%, you can't afford to spend much on customer acquisition. So you're basically too tight. And that means that there's no room for any error. So at 31%, you're definitely in trouble. You can't run paid ads profitably, and you can't afford to test new channels. You're basically stuck. I've realized that this is the reason why most CPG founders can't scale past $100,000 a month. Their margins are simply too tight. All right, so here's another way to look at it. Your markup. So your markup shows how much you're charging above your costs. So look at this, 44.76%, meaning you're marking up your costs by less than 50%. Now take a look at this benchmark, 200% or higher. So this is where elite CPG brands are doing 2x to 3x markup on their costs. But this founder at 44.76% is not even close. So this is obviously below 100%. So this founder is basically in struggling territory. If this was yellow, it'd be 100 to 200% markup, right? That's okay, but it's not great. And green means, so for 200%, it's obviously green. So this is exactly where you want to be. So this is your break-even customer acquisition cost. So this tells you the maximum amount you can spend to acquire a customer without losing money on the first order. All right, so look, we have here $9.74. So that's it. If you spend more than $9.74 to acquire a customer, you're losing money on day one. And in 2026 with Google and Facebook ads, good luck acquiring a customer for less than $10. It's basically impossible unless you're crushing it with organic content and influencers. All right, so let's plug in the real CAC. So most CPG founders I talk to spending anywhere from $25 to $50 to acquire a customer through paid ads. So let's say this founder is spending $50 per customer. All right, watch what just happened to the net profit. Look at that. The net profit is now negative $40.26. So this founder is basically losing $40 on every single sale. So on one hand, they're spending $50 to acquire a customer. And on the other hand, they're making $9.74 in gross profit and ending up $40 in the hole per order. So this is actually where they should be. So $6.30, which represents a healthy 20% net profit margin. This is the reality for most founders under $100,000 a month. They think they're growing because revenue is going up, but in reality, they're not really making any money and they're bleeding. You can't scale this. You can't raise money on this. You can't build a real business. This is not something getting funding is going to fix. This is why you need to fix your margins first before you actually scale. I know you're probably asking, what do I do if my numbers look like this? First of all, don't panic because this is fixable. You need to look at this systematically. So what you need to do is renegotiate your cost of goods sold, get your landed costs down, find better manufacturers, and optimize your foundation. Sometimes you might just have to even increase your price. I see a lot of founders underpricing their product because they're scared that nobody's gonna buy it because there's a competitor in the market who's selling it for cheaper. Let's be real, if your margins are trash, you most likely need to raise your price or at least cut down your cost of goods sold. Another thing is if you're working with a 3PL, you really need to look at the rates that they're charging you, right? So maybe it might be time to consider to get another 3PL that's more cost efficient, but not sacrificing the quality, right? Because we want to make sure that your orders are going out properly and there's no mistakes that's happening. You don't want to sacrifice price and quality because in that case, you might as well just pay more. And if you have to pay more because you can't find a better 3PL, then you're going to have to raise your price, right? So like I said, you're going to most likely have to get better 3PL rates, get better packaging costs, right? So stop spending so much money on paper and fancy stuff and just really look at how much it's eating into your margins. And obviously, if you're shipping out, you want to make sure that you're getting the most optimal shipping zones, right? And lastly, improve your customer acquisition costs, right? You want to get better on your messaging. You want to get better with your content, your funnels. You want to make sure that there's no friction for somebody to see your product and then go and buy your product, right? Also making sure that you have a higher AOV. So instead of having a customer buy just one product, have them buy bulks. So your average order volume goes from just maybe $5 if you price at $5 for one product to then $15 if they get 3 products in total, however you decide to price it. And also go organic before you scale paid ads. You don't want to be just spending money and throwing money at these ad accounts and you haven't had a proof of concept yet. So this is exactly what we do inside Productize Accelerator. We use our operator OS system and help founders who are stuck and not being able to break that $100,000 a month range. And we help them with their unit economics, their core messaging, their margins, and everything that they need to be able to scale their business. So essentially, we're helping founders to build their margin structure so that they can hit $100,000 plus a month profitably. So here's the truth. You can't fund your way or advertise your way out of a margin problem. So if your unit economics don't work, more traffic just means losing money faster. You have to fix the foundation first. All right, so if you want to grab this calculator for yourself, it's down below in the link in the description. You can use it completely for free. Make a copy of this, plug in your numbers, and you'll see exactly where you stand. Stop chasing revenue and start building profits. I'll see you in the next one.